I request Pranavji to take over and start sharing the screen and start his talk. Very you.
Okay, so I have started sharing the screen. Can you see this title slide?
Yes, Pranavji, go ahead.
Okay. Hi everyone. Today I'll be talking about this topic called power of nothing. So yeah, let's just dive into it. Okay. Okay. So first I would like to bring to your attention what this nothing is. So I just want to briefly so throughout this talk, what I'll be doing is I'll be taking a concept of what I think represents something that is close to nothing, and I'll talk about how that idea evolved, what we could do with that idea in today's present day society is how I have designed this talk. So first of all, so how do you understand something? So in order to understand anything, you understand something, right? Like the way I know that this is a pen is because I understand that something that has this kind of a shape that which I can tap and write. And so I need something, I need a notion of what is writing. I need a notion of what is shape. So to understand anything, to understand that as something very simple as this is a pen, what I do is I understand the details of it. So now the main important question is, how do you understand nothing? Like, because understanding itself by definition means to understand something. So this is a very tricky concept. So how to understand nothing? So so today I'll be introducing this idea through a notion which I feel is very similar in the field of mathematics. So let's see how it goes. So first of all, I want to start with some history on how people grappled with this idea of nothing. They knew that there had to be something, but they couldn't just come up with it. So what is the so how does the history look like? So first, I want to take you back to what is around 700 BC, and the place is now what is right now modern Iraq, Babylon. So what Babylonians did is they came up with a system to write numbers. So they use symbols like these to represent numbers, and they had something called as a hexadecimal system where things. So as of now, we have number system from 1 to 10. After 10, you write 11 as 1 1, and then let's say 100 and 111 is 1 1 1. So everything goes in steps of 10 for us. So the unique symbols are 0 to 9. For Babylonians, it was 0 to 60. So this number over here is a symbol of 56, where this represents 5 and this is 6. Then 60, so this number is 64. The way they would write 64 is they would write 4, put a space, and then the next unit would be 1. So this would be 1 times 60 plus 4. But the Babylonians came up with this system, but there were also some drawbacks. So they didn't know how to represent some numbers like 60 and 3604. And the reason was that they didn't know how to represent, they didn't understand this concept of 0, and they didn't know what it meant. So what they did is they introduced a new symbol, and they assumed it was there should be something in between, but they didn't know how to interpret it, so they just put two symbols in between. They thought it would be something. So for them, 0 was like a placeholder where it would represent something. So similar thing was also evolved in the Mayan civilization, in the present day Mexico region, where 0 again had a symbol like this, and they used this 0 as a placeholder, just like similar to the Babylonians. But it was the Indians who conceived the notion of 0 as a value. And what is a value? Nothing. So this idea, I believe, is very, very fundamental in mathematics, because when you assign 0 a value, it gets tied on with all the other numbers, and you can develop rules for this. Like 1 plus 0 is 1, 1 minus 0 is 1, 1 times 0 is 0, and this very important thing, 1 over 0 tends to something called as infinity. So 0 as a value, and understanding that the value is nothing. So there is something which you can't, there is something which you can represent as a value, like any finite number, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And yet, where there is nothing, you don't even think of the idea of assigning a value to it. And yet, the idea that you can have a value to it and you can assign it a nothing value is what revolutionized this field of mathematics. And credit of this goes to our Indian sages like Aryabhatta, Brahmagupta, Bhaskara, Charya, and so on. And they also devised these rules for mathematics. So what is this stress on 0 as a value? So why is it so important? Because since you can understand, since you can conceive a value of nothing, since you can conceive a notion of 0, nothing, you can also conceive the notion of everything. So this is in line. So this is very much in line with our with the spiritual teachings that we have. And over here, what I'll do is I'll just show how you can achieve this idea through mathematics. So you take an apple, you slice it into 4. So what you end up with is 4 apples, but with 1/4 the size of, but with the piece size is now 1/4 of the apple. Now you can go on.
No.
Sorry. Okay. Now what you can do is you can take each slice of this 1/4 of the apple. You can again cut it into 4. So totally you'll end up with 16 pieces of apple, whose size is 1/16 of the initial size of the apple. Now you can go on cutting each piece into infinitesimally small parts. So you can reach a size of 0 apples, but with infinite amount of small pieces. So this is how you can conceive. So this is essentially, so what I've shown over here is the principle of doing 1/0. So where you can conceive infinity. No other, without assigning 0 as a value, you can never understand the concept of infinity. So this is how powerful it was to assign nothingness a value. So another interpretation of infinity is to come up with something called as an infinite series. So I'll just quickly show you how that happens. So let's say you have a full circle, or let's say a full apple, you can cut it into two. So you have one half and a one half here. Now you can take that same one half, cut it again into two. You'll end up with a quarter and a quarter. You can take the quarter again, cut it into two. You get 1/8 and 1/8. And you can go on, right? So this one, I can write it as a sum of half. Then I add a quarter. Then I add an 1/8. Then I add a 1/16, and so on. I keep adding up. So this notion of adding infinite things to get something finite, this wouldn't have been possible without knowing this concept of zero. So interpretations of infinity comes up with an interpretation of zero. So this is why understanding zero was so important. All of this fundamental mathematical things stem from understanding this concept of zero. So I would like to provide a reason as to why Indians were experts in understanding the zero. So we have always had a rich spiritual background. So I think everybody knows this shloka. Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudichyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Avashishyate. So a brief translation of this. So from completeness arises completeness. Now you remove completeness from completeness, and completeness alone remains. So to put this into mathematics, so you can do zero, you can add 0 to 0 and you get 0. You subtract 0 out of 0 and you still get 0. Or if you want to think of the other extreme, you take infinity, you add infinity, you get infinity. You take infinity, you subtract infinity from it, you still end up with infinity. So this I would like to take as an example where the consequence, so where having a very rich culture of spirituality has impacted humans in developing a system which would be very easy to understand what is going on around us. So now I want to take you to the current scenario in the current world where we have a very rich system of mathematics now. There have been a lot of developments. There have been a lot of developments in science as well. So how do we start from here? So, our ancient people, from a rich background in spirituality, they came up with science. So there must be a way to go back, right? There must be a way to understand science and thus understand spirituality. So that is what I would like to take us to. So in my previous talk, I had stressed how science could impact our spiritual lives. So science as a sadhana. So I'll just briefly go through that. So how does science help us as a sadhana? Well, one thing is we develop curiosity to ask deeper questions. So every scientist always keeps asking these questions: where, when, how, why. So it is only when we have a curious mind, it is only when we have a mind where we want to know more, it is only in such a state that we can keep asking questions. So science cultivates this ability to ask deeper questions. So as a sadhana, develop this immense curiosity to ask deeper questions. And the other thing is to develop passion. So develop this, extreme passion to know the truth of something. Why? Keep asking, what is it? What is it? Here you can see, right? There's a picture over here of a person, of a child. He's asking, what is it? He's grown old and he's still asking, what is it? So develop this passion to understand something. So how does this take us back to this concept of zero and mathematics? So today, like I said, we are blessed with so much amount of mathematics. There's been so many developments. There's been so much more understanding in this field. So how do we devote some of our time in understanding this concept of nothingness? So we have been taking this number zero for granted. We have been taking the system of mathematics for granted. We know that we have been taking 1 + 1 is 2 for granted. We've been taking 2 multiplied by 2 as 4 for granted. But what is the working principle behind it? How did it work? How did all of these systems originate? What was that initial idea? What was that initial thinking behind developing such a system is what we need to dig more now. So I want to give one very famous mathematician in this field, Srinivasa Ramanujan, whose work is still under research. We still don't know a lot of things that he said. There's been a lot of equations. There's been a lot of theorems that he has given, which we are still trying to understand. So Ramanujan said every equation is an expression of God. So I want to just take a few, I just want to try to understand this, and I want to present this the way I have understood this. So what does Ramanujan actually mean by every equation is an expression of God? So you take a line. So you can write an equation for a line, and you can say zero is, so this is how you represent the equation of a line. Zero is y minus mx plus minus c. Leave the math part, leave this complicated part out, but you can represent a line like this using mathematics. So here is an ice cream cone. You can describe the shape of an ice cream cone using mathematics, and you can say zero is that. So this is a sunflower this is a sunflower. So the seeds in the sunflower, they are arranged in a very nice pattern, and that pattern is this shape over here, and it can be defined as zeros as something. Then you have DNA. So every human being is built up of has this DNA in a cell, and the shape of this DNA can be written as zero as something. So anything that you see can be defined in mathematics. The shape can be defined. The physics of it can be defined using mathematics, and everything of corresponding to that, anything that you understand can be written down in this language of mathematics. So zero as this, zero as this, zero as this, zero as this, and so on. So every expression can be understood as originating from the symbol zero. So this is how I understand Ramanujan's way of thinking, where every expression is born out of this fundamental value of zero, and the ability and the fact that the zero was born out of this idea of understanding nothingness plays a very central role. So now that we have so much math, so much so much understanding in these fields, it is time to set aside a little bit of our time to actually understand how these things were developed and what it really means to understand this symbol of zero, to understand this nothingness. Thank you.
Okay, that's a very intriguing thought, Pranavji. First, the last thing, what your understanding is that each equation is actually trying to not is trying to balance something in such a way that the error is always zero. Is that the
So an equation itself is an idea that comes from the concept of zero, nothingness.
okay.
So so any form, any idea that you have, it comes from this understanding of the value of zero, because without understanding nothing, you can't balance out anything.
Okay.
So if I have to say one value is equal to the other, that means at some point I need to know what zero is as well. If I say 2 is equal to 2, I must know 2 minus 2 is equal to 0. I take 2 away from that 2. I need to understand what remains, right?
Yes. So if you are actually equating two things, then what you're saying is equating two things means the difference between them is nothing.
Yes, and we need to understand, that there is nothing.
There's nothing. Okay.
Yes.
Good. Okay. So one is this the concept of nothing and the concept of infinity, but
Yes.
the relationship between nothing and something.
Yes.
There are a lot of debates on how the universe came out of something came out of nothing. So how you have gone from something to nothing. Now, how does it help us to actually solve this mystery of nothing coming out of something?
Nothing doesn't come out of something.
Something coming out of nothing, because the world seemed to have been.
So you can see this, right? So this is something y minus mx minus c, which represents a line, and it's come out of this number called 0. Then you have this one, which represents a cone, and it's come out of 0.
Okay. So that's how we explain. That's wonderful. Okay.
Yeah, this is my way of thinking. It's
yeah, this is a good point.
So so for me, the detail of how something. So this is not strictly a causal relationship. I'm not saying that this came out of this. I can as well turn it around and say this is there because it obeys something like this. So I am not interested in the causal relationship. I'm just trying to understand a very fundamental concept, the concept of zero and the concept of nothingness, and how it is how truly understanding the value of zero in mathematics is very, very intricately related to understanding of nothingness in spirituality.
Okay.
This is the point that I want to drive in, where from a concept that we present in the present day society, that we learn from beginning from our first standard, or even before that, where we are drilled to understand, where we're drilled to know that 1 + 1 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4. Like mathematics has become something very easy for us. So the hard part now for mathematics is to go back and try to understand how these things evolved. Because if you see, so this is what I wanted to stress, that if you see how zero has evolved through math, how the concept of zero, how understanding the value that, how understanding that you can provide nothingness also as a value, this has come because of our roots in spirituality, is the way I understand it. So now it is time to go back, try to understand how that came up. So this is how far I would like to take people from a science background and introduce them to this notion of nothingness of spirituality, because that is where I find things are common.
Okay. So let's open the floor for some questions. Anyone can either ask a question or put it in the chat. I don't know if yeah. So any question for Pranav on the significance of this nothing? The other one that I wanted to look at is nothing and or silence are very close in spirituality. Silence is something fundamentally important for spirituality, because only when what we see or what we perceive falsely, we stop that, or we are in the silence with respect to the false, we'll be able to understand the truth. That is the point. So here, there are, in mathematics, one of the things we always try to look at is the error between something that we are trying to predict and something that is actual. So how is that related to this nothing concept? See,
error for me. So mathematics is precise in the sense that there can't be any other thing. Now, what is imprecise is what is imprecise is these theorems and the physics, our way of understanding things is imprecise. That is when you can come up with errors and stuff. So 1 + 1 is always going to be 2. It's never going to be 3.
Yes.
Now your definition of, if you change your definition of what addition is, then it will differ.
Correct.
So that's why I say mathematics is always precise. So now, yes. So now the question of error and other things come up when you are trying to understand, like, let's say, for example, this equation, right? This equation over here, or for example, this arrangement of seeds in a sunflower. So this equation over here is a perfect equation. Now, how well do the seeds of the sunflower fit into this equation? That is where you have error.
Okay.
Because why the sunflowers are arranged this way, it's another topic. It's physics. So in physics, you have errors. Trying to understand why something is correlated in this way has errors. Mathematics in itself doesn't have errors.
Okay. So in that
this
way,
is the difference.
Yeah, can we say that actually mathematics is, while it's precise, we are using it to understand physics, and there is always a gap between how we represent in mathematics and actuality in physics?
No, so the language. So you should think of physics. You should think of mathematics as a language code. Okay, so something like alphabets. So we use so we have a language. Let's say Hindi. So in Hindi you have this Devanagari alphabets, right? A, I, I, Ka, Kha, Ga, Ga, Ma. These alphabets are never going to change. Now, the way I use Hindi and the way you use Hindi, the way you speak Hindi, the way I speak Hindi is going to be different.
Okay.
We are going to stress. So let's say my name is Pranav. I say Pranav in one way. You say Pranav in another way. But you are going, when you represent it, it's always going to be some symbol in this Devanagari script. That is not going to change. Right? Now, the way I pronounce Pranav and you pronounce Pranav is going to be different. That is going to depend on how you are going to bring the letter out from your mouth and all these other things.
Okay.
The same analogy goes to math and physics.
Okay.
So Pranav, so the language of alphabets is abstract. It doesn't make any sense. It makes sense only when you try to use it. For example, Pranav as a name, or laptop as an understanding of what laptop is. By itself, the letters don't make any sense. It's a tool used to simplify our communication skills. Similarly, mathematics is a tool developed to understand this universe. And the communication is through understanding this physics.
Okay. That's good. Good. So let's look at if there's any questions. And I don't know if Prabhuji is able to come in, because I know he's some
Shravan, my audio was poor. I don't know whether you are able to hear me.
And now we can hear you.
I'll not be able to ask any question. I'll discuss this later. Thanks, Pranav, for the wonderful speech. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Prabhuji. So thanks, Pranav. If we have no questions, let's close this talk. But it's as you said, it's a very profound topic, not only in mathematics but also in and it's not as easy as we think to go back and find out the origin of this very concept. So thank you. And if there's no question, let's